Some places are meant to be left off the map. And sometimes, the places that do show up on Airbnb are there for a reason. I booked a remote cabin in Alaska. The listing called it The Lookout. Cozy, isolated, panoramic views, and 3 rules, not suggestions. Warnings. Don't go outside if the snow melts in a perfect circle. Don't open the door if a child knocks. If your breath fogs the window and you're not near it, run. This isn't just another creepy rental story. It's not about ghosts. It's about something that watches. Watch until the very end, because the twist will change everything. And if you've ever stayed somewhere that felt wrong for reasons you couldn't explain, leave a comment. Hit subscribe before something else answers the knock on your door. Welcome to Night Creepypasta Rules. I booked an Airbnb for a getaway in Alaska, and there were 3 strange rules to survive. The silence wasn't empty. It pressed against the Jeep's windows, heavy as the snowdrifts walling off the narrow track, promising isolation so complete, it felt like suffocation. Miles back, we left the last vestiges of Juneau civilization behind, crawling deeper into a vast white wilderness where mountains clawed at a bruised twilight sky. Anna sat stiffly beside me, her gaze fixed on the seemingly endless expanse of snow and black, skeletal trees, her knuckles white where she gripped the door handle. The unspoken tension between us, the reason for this desperate escape to the edge of the world, felt as palpable as the biting cold seeping through the car's seals. We needed this getaway, or perhaps we were just running out of places to run from the grief that dogged us both. The Lookout, as the Airbnb listing called it, finally emerged from the twilight gloom, a starkly modern structure of dark wood and large glass panes perched on a rise overlooking a frozen, snow-dusted valley. Beautiful, undeniably, and utterly, terrifyingly alone. Getting the Jeep up the final, uncleared slope was a low-gear struggle, tires spinning against the packed ice beneath the fresh powder. When I finally killed the engine, the sudden, profound silence was broken only by the low moan of the wind through the surrounding pines. Inside, the cabin was exactly as pictured. Minimalist furniture, polished concrete floors, softened by thick rugs, a state-of-the-art kitchen, and a huge stone fireplace dominating the main living area. Walls of glass offered panoramic views of the indifferent wilderness. Cozy, yet exposed. On the polished kitchen island sat a thermos of apparently still warm coffee, a basket of local snacks, and a single laminated card. "Welcome to the Lookout." The card read in neat, impersonal print. Wood is stacked by the hearth. Generator instructions are in the binder. Wi-Fi is spotty. Embrace the disconnect for your comfort and safety. Previous guests found these guidelines helpful. Below that, the 3 rules, stark and unexplained. If the snow around the cabin melts in a perfect circle, don't go outside. If a child knocks and asks for warmth, don't open the door. If your breath fogs the window but you're not near it, run. Helpful guidelines, Anna read over my shoulder, her voice tight with disbelief. "What the hell is this, Daniel? Some kind of creepy local joke?" "Maybe," I said, trying to sound reassuring, though a strange unease prickled beneath my skin. I remembered the brief exchange with the elderly shopkeeper, Mary, back in Juneau when I'd mentioned where we were staying. Her warm smile had faded instantly. "The Lookout, up past the old pass," she'd murmured, her eyes clouding over. "That place holds its breath. Be careful what you let in." At the time, I dismissed it as local superstition. Now, looking at the laminated card, her words felt less like folklore and more like a warning. "It's probably just the owner being weird," Anna insisted, already unpacking groceries, trying to impose normalcy on the unsettling situation. "Remote places, people get eccentric." Maybe she was right, but as I stood by the vast picture window, watching the twilight deepen into an endless Alaskan night, the forest pressing close. I saw it, a flicker of movement at the edge of the tree line, where the weak porch light failed, something pale against the snow, vanishing instantly. A snowshoe hare, or just my grief-stricken mind, already projecting shadows onto the pristine white landscape. I turned away from the glass, the reflection showing the tension in my own face. The cabin suddenly feeling less like a sanctuary, and more like a glass cage suspended in the vast, indifferent dark. The first night was a restless truce, with the unfamiliar silence. The cabin groaned and settled around us, sounds amplified by the stillness, the low sigh of the wind, the distant crack of freezing timber, the rhythmic hum of the generator kicking in. Anna eventually fell into an exhausted sleep, but I lay awake for hours, listening, straining to interpret the language of the isolated night, the memory of Mary's warning and the strange rules replaying in my head. Morning arrived not with bright sun, but with a pearlescent gray light filtering through the heavy cloud cover, illuminating a world blanketed in fresh snow from an overnight flurry. I got up first, moving quietly to start the coffee, needing the routine, the warmth. Walking past the main picture window, overlooking the valley, I stopped dead, coffee filter still in hand. The fresh snow lay undisturbed across the landscape, a pristine white sheet stretching towards the dark tree line, except directly around the cabin, in a perfect, geometrically precise circle, extending maybe 15 feet out from the walls. The snow was gone, not just melted, but vanished. The dark, damp earth beneath was exposed, steaming faintly in the frigid air. The transition from bare ground to deep snowpack, unnervingly sharp and exact. Rule 1. Snow melts in a perfect circle. Don't go outside. My heart hammered against my ribs. Anna, I called, my voice hoarse. Anna, come look at this. She joined me at the window, initial sleepiness vanishing as she took in the impossible sight. What is that? She breathed. Is it geothermal? A hot spring under the cabin? There was nothing about that in the listing, I said, my mind racing. And look how perfect the circle is. It's right up to the foundation. It has to be something natural, she insisted, though doubt flickered in her eyes. A septic field malfunctioned. We should go check it out. She moved towards the door. No! The word came out sharper than intended. I held up the laminated card we'd left on the counter. Rule 1, Anna. It says don't go outside. Daniel, that's ridiculous, she argued, frustration replacing her confusion. It's a plumbing issue or a geological quirk. We can't just stay trapped in here because of some creepy note. What if it's not a quirk? I countered, feeling a deep, primal dread settle over me. What if that circle means something? What if staying inside is the safe thing to do right now? The argument simmered between us, unspoken grief and present fear creating a volatile mix. But the sheer wrongness of the perfectly circular Thaw, the steaming earth against the frozen landscape, held us captive. We stayed inside, prisoners of the rule, watching the circle from the windows. The day crawled by. The circle remained, unchanging. We felt exposed, watched from the silent, snow-laden trees beyond the unnatural boundary. Once, I thought I saw faint impressions appearing on the damp earth within the circle. Not footprints, but shallow, elongated scrapes, as if something heavy without feet had dragged itself across the ground. By the time I convinced Anna to look, they were gone, or perhaps had never been there at all. Just before the long twilight finally began its slow descent into night, I saw it again, or rather, felt it. Standing by the window, looking out past the circle, the undisturbed snowfield beyond seemed to shift. A subtle ripple moved beneath the surface, like a large body turning over in its sleep, just under the white blanket. It was there, then gone, leaving the snowfield looking exactly as it had before. But I knew what I had seen. Something was out there, just beyond the circle, and the rule, suddenly, felt less like a suggestion and more like a command etched in ice. The circle vanished overnight. We woke to find fresh snow blanketing everything right up to the cabin walls, erasing any trace of the previous day's anomaly. It was profoundly unsettling. The evidence of the strangeness wiped clean, leaving us to question our own shared experience. Was it real? Or was the isolation, the grief, playing tricks on us? The gaslighting, whether intentional or environmental, frayed our already strained nerves. That day passed in a haze of forced normalcy and simmering tension. We kept the fire roaring, played cards with forced cheerfulness, tried to ignore the way the wind seemed to whisper around the eaves, the way the shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally in the corners of the room, even in the middle of the day. The generator sputtered occasionally, plunging us into flickering, heart-stopping moments of near darkness. Communication with the outside world was non-existent. The Wi-Fi signal had vanished completely, and cell service remained stubbornly absent. We were truly cut off. The storm hit after dark, arriving with a sudden violent fury. Wind howled like a hungry animal around the cabin, rattling the windows, driving snow horizontally against the glass. The power, reliant on the generator, flickered more violently now, threatening to fail completely. We huddled near the fireplace, the only source of reliable light and warmth. The vast darkness outside pressing against the large windows. Then came the sound, almost lost beneath the wind's roar. Faint, persistent, a light, hesitant tapping at the main door. Tap, tap, tap. We froze, looking at each other, eyes wide in the firelight. Just the wind, Anna whispered, unconvincingly, branches hitting the door. But the tapping continued, rhythmic, deliberate, and then a voice, small and thin, barely audible over the storm's howl, seeming to come from right outside the thick wooden door. Please. Hello? Can you help me? Please. Let me in. I'm so cold. It sounded like a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, voice trembling with cold and fear. Rule 2. Child knocks. Asks for warmth. Don't open the door, Anna gasped, scrambling to her feet, her face etched with horror and pity. Daniel, my God, there's a child out there. In this storm, we have to. No! I grabbed her arm, pulling her back from the door, my own heart pounding with a sickening mix of terror and guilt. I pointed a shaking finger towards the rule card, still sitting on the nearby table. Anna, the rule. Don't open the door. Are you insane? She cried, trying to pull away. That's a child. We can't just leave them to freeze. What if their parents crashed? What if they're lost? What if it's not a child? I hissed back, the memory of Mary's warning, the impossible snow circle, vivid in my mind. What if it's a lure? Like the rule says, the knocking came again, more insistent now. Please. It's so cold. Just let me warm up for a minute. Please. The voice was heartbreakingly plaintive. Anna sobbed, torn. I felt like a monster, standing there, barricading the door against a child's pleas. But the absolute conviction behind the rules, the things we'd already seen, held me fast. We stood frozen, listening to the desperate cries and the relentless tapping, the wind howling around us like a chorus of the damned. Risking everything, I crept to the door's peephole, shielding it from the firelight. I peered out into the maelstrom. Swirling snow, blackness, the frantic dance of trees at the edge of the weak porch light. Nothing else. No small figure huddled against the storm. No footprints leading to the door. Yet the knocking continued, right beneath the peephole now, and the child's voice pleaded, I know you're in there. Please. Suddenly, the knocking and the voice stopped. Dead silence, except for the wind. We waited, breath held. Then, from the other side of the cabin, near the large picture windows overlooking the valley, we heard it. Faint, chilling, unmistakable. A sound like a child's soft, knowing giggle carried on the wind. Then it too was gone, leaving only the storm and the crushing weight of our fear inside the firelit cabin. Sleep was impossible after the knocking incident. We spent the rest of the night huddled together by the dying fire, starting at every creak of the cabin, every howl of the wind. The storm eventually blew itself out, leaving behind a world buried even deeper in snow, pristine and silent under a weak gray dawn. But the silence felt different now, violated. We hadn't opened the door, but something felt like it had gotten closer, like it had tested our boundaries and found them wanting. Trust between Anna and me was a frayed thread. Her earlier skepticism had been replaced by a raw, simmering fear. But underneath it, I sensed a current of resentment directed at me, at my insistence on following the rules that had forced us to ignore a child's desperate pleas. I couldn't blame her. I felt like a monster myself. But the alternative felt infinitely worse. We barely spoke, moving through the motions of survival, chopping more wood, checking the dwindling generator fuel, rationing food, trapped in our shared isolation and separate fears. We tried messaging the host again via the Airbnb app, hoping the storm had passed and some signal might get through. Severe storm last night. Heard strange noises, knocking. Is there a history of animal activity or anything unusual we should know about this property? I typed, trying to sound calm, rational. Hours later, a reply finally blinked onto my phone screen, the signal vanishing immediately after. Alaska wilderness, full of surprises. Oh, sounds like cabin fever perhaps. The woods play tricks. Previous guests found focusing on the fireplace very calming. Ensure generator fuel is topped up. Enjoy the rustic charm, the forced cheerfulness, the complete dismissal of our concerns, the non-answer. It felt deliberate, malignant. Was the host monitoring us? Were they amused by our terror? Late that afternoon, the oppressive gray sky began to clear slightly, weak sunlight filtering through the clouds, making the snowscape outside glitter unnaturally. I stood near the large picture window in the main room, gazing out at the valley, trying to map a potential escape route in my mind if things got worse. Anna was across the room trying to read by the weak light, wrapped in a blanket. Suddenly, the vast expanse of glass directly in front of me fogged over. And dom de hini, hanastistiga kane, asas you untilted ye, exordasti, satin. Not a gradual misting from the temperature difference, but a thick, instantaneous patch of condensation appearing on the pane, perfectly mirroring the size and shape of human breath exhaled from inches away. Except I was standing a good 5 feet back from the window. Rule 3. Breath fogs the window, but you're not near it. Run. Primal terror. Cold and absolute. Bypassed thought entirely. Run! The word tore from my throat as I instinctively scrambled backwards, grabbing Anna's arm and yanking her away from the windows, towards the center of the room, heart threatening to explode in my chest. Daniel, what is it? She cried out, stumbling, terrified by my sudden panic. I could only point, trembling, towards the window. The patch of fog hung there for a sickening moment, obscuring the view outside, a tangible sign of an intimate, invisible presence right there with us. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it began to fade, evaporating back into the cold, clear glass, leaving no trace, or almost no trace. As the last wisps of condensation vanished, my eyes caught it, just before it disappeared completely, a faint, fleeting outline on the inside of the glass where the fog had been thickest. The unmistakable, ephemeral print of a hand, small, slender, pressed against the pane from within our supposed sanctuary. Something was inside, or it could get inside whenever it wanted, and it had just shown us it was watching. The fading handprint on the inside of the glass was a violation that shattered any remaining illusion of safety. Whatever haunted this place wasn't just outside. It was with us, intimately aware, capable of manifesting its presence within our sanctuary. As dusk bled into another impossibly long Alaskan night, a blizzard descended with sudden, shocking ferocity, howling around the cabin like a chorus of banshees, plastering snow against the already compromised windows. Almost immediately, the generator outside coughed, sputtered, and died with a final defeated groan, plunging the cabin into near-total darkness, lit only by the frantic, hungry dance of flames in the fireplace. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to overwhelm us. Then, the phenomena began. No longer subtle tests, but a full-blown assault. The rhythmic knocking returned, not just at the main door, but at the back door, the kitchen window, shifting, surrounding us. And the child's voice, thin and pleading, seemed to come from all directions at once over the wind's roar. So cold. Let me in, please. Anna huddled by the fire, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth, tears streaming down her face. Then, the snow outside the main picture windows began to change. Not melting this time, but swirling, coalescing in the faint firelight, filtering outwards. A perfect circle formed again, not of thawed earth, but of unnaturally agitated, swirling snow, contained within an invisible boundary, while flakes fell placidly elsewhere. And within the swirling circle, dark, shifting shapes seemed to writhe just beneath the surface. Rule 1 held us captive inside, while Rule 2 laid siege to the doors. My phone, miraculously finding a single bar of signal, buzzed with an incoming Airbnb message notification. The host, experiencing authentic Alaskan weather. Thrilling. Remember to keep the fire fed. Some find the rhythmic sounds of the storm quite meditative. Embrace the experience. The cheerful emojis felt like digital knives twisting in my gut. He knew. He had to know. It's not safe. I typed back frantically. Something is trying to get in. Almost instantly, the large window overlooking the valley, the one that had fogged earlier, misted over again from the inside, thick and white. Rule 3. Run! I scrambled away, pulling Anna with me, deeper into the cabin's central room, away from the glass walls. Other windows began to fog simultaneously, obscuring the outside world, trapping us in the flickering firelight with the sounds of the siege. The knocking grew heavier, more demanding, accompanied now by a faint, abrasive scratching sound against the wood of the main door. Another message alert. The host. Structure is very sound, built to withstand elements. Previous guests reported feeling a profound sense of connection to the place during storms. Perhaps lean into that feeling? Acceptance brings peace. Acceptance? He wanted us to open the door, to look closely at the windows, to go outside. He was facilitating this. We piled furniture against the main door, wedged chairs under the handles of others, listened as the scratching intensified, as the child's voice dissolved into something less human, a high-pitched, chilling mimicry. Windows fogged and cleared unpredictably around the room. We fed the fire obsessively, the roaring heat our only weapon against the invasive cold that seemed to radiate from the walls themselves. Hours passed in a blur of terror, huddled together, listening to the cabin groan under the assault of the storm and the relentless attention of the white visitor, praying for dawn, praying for the rules to somehow hold until the siege broke. Dawn arrived not with relief, but with exhaustion so profound it felt like drowning. The blizzard blew itself out as suddenly as it had begun, leaving behind a world transformed, buried under immense drifts, silent save for the drip of melting snow from the eaves under a pale, watery sun. The knocking had stopped hours ago. The windows were clear. Looking outside hesitantly, the perfect circle was gone, replaced by smooth, deep snow. No tracks led to or from the cabin. It was as if the night's horrors had been nothing but a shared, intense nightmare, except for the deep, gouging scratches marring the exterior of the main door, and the lingering, bone-deep chill in the air that had nothing to do with the outside temperature. We had survived the night, but something essential had broken between us. The shared terror hadn't forged a stronger bond. It had exposed the raw, ragged edges of our grief and fear, leaving us isolated even in proximity. We moved with the numb efficiency of automatons, avoiding each other's eyes. Pack. Leave. Now, the Jeep was a snowdrift with windows. It took nearly 2 hours of frantic, freezing work with a flimsy emergency shovel stored in the cabin to clear enough snow to even reach the doors. My breath plumed, freezing instantly on my beard. Anna worked silently beside me, her face pale and set. When I finally got the engine to turn over after several sputtering protests against the intense cold, the sound felt like a miracle. The drive back down the mountain track was treacherous, slow, punctuated by skids and near misses on the ice hidden beneath the powder. Every shadowed hollow, every dense thicket of pines, seemed to hold watchful eyes. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a flicker of white against white pacing us. Anna just stared straight ahead, hands clenched in her lap. The vast, majestic landscape felt suffocating now, imbued with a silent, predatory menace. Reaching the main highway, seeing another car, felt like breaking the surface after being held underwater. We didn't speak of the host, the rules, the knocking, the breath on the glass. The experience felt too vast, too insane to put into words. How could we explain it to anyone? How could we explain it even to ourselves? Pulling into Juneau felt like re-entering reality from a nightmare dimension. The mundane sights, traffic lights, storefronts, people walking bundled against the cold, seemed alien, fragile. We stopped at the first gas station, the fluorescent lights of the convenience store buzzing aggressively bright after the dim cabin. I tried checking the Airbnb app again. The listing for the lookout was gone. The host's profile, deleted or anonymized. All message history vanished, as if it and we had never existed. We were utterly cut off, with no proof beyond our shared, shattering memories. We saw Mary, the shopkeeper, from our arrival, sweeping snow from her walkway. She looked up as we drove past, her gaze lingering on our faces for a moment, her expression one of deep, weary sadness. She knew. She didn't need proof. Life after the lookout was a fragile thing. We returned home to the familiar routines and obligations, but the Alaskan wilderness had imprinted itself onto our souls. The silence of our apartment felt different, not peaceful, but waiting. We jumped at unexpected knocks, scrutinized reflections, felt a pang of irrational fear when seeing children playing in the cold. The space between Anna and me widened, filled with the unspoken horrors we couldn't process, let alone share. Eventually, quietly, we drifted apart, the shared trauma, a chasm too wide to bridge. I tried reporting the host, the listing, to Airbnb. Sent detailed accounts, screenshots of the initial booking confirmation, before the listing vanished. Received polite, automated responses about investigating platform violations, followed by radio silence. Contacted the Juneau Police Department, spoke of a potentially negligent or fraudulent rental situation, hinted at safety concerns. Was met with polite skepticism, jurisdictional questions, and the unavoidable lack of concrete evidence. We were just another couple spooked by isolation and bad weather in the wilderness. Case closed before it was even opened. Months passed. I moved apartments, tried therapy, tried to rationalize, tried to forget. The sharp edges of the terror dulled, but the underlying dread remained, a low hum beneath the surface of everyday life. Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, sorting through emails, I saw it. An automated message from Airbnb. Subject: how was your stay at the Lookout? My blood ran cold. The listing was gone. The host vanished. Yet their automated system, glitching perhaps across time and digital space, had sent the review request. Morbid curiosity, or maybe a need to confront the phantom, made me open it. Standard template: rate your stay, leave comments, upload photos, and attached as usual was a generic photo of the property intended to jog the guest's memory. It was a standard exterior shot of the cabin. The Lookout, nestled amongst the snow-laden pines, looking deceptively peaceful under a gray Alaskan sky. Just a thumbnail preview. I almost deleted the email, but something made me click, enlarging the photo on my screen. I zoomed in, focusing on the main picture window. The large pane of glass overlooking the valley where I'd stood watching the impossible snow circle form, where the unexplained breath had fogged the glass. It was dark inside the cabin in the photo, shadows obscuring the interior. But as I magnified the image further, pixels resolving, my breath hitched in my throat. There, faint, blurry, but undeniably present, pressed against the inside of that specific window, was a face, pale, indistinct, staring out from the darkness within the cabin, staring directly at the camera, staring directly at me, and with a final, sickening lurch of recognition that sent ice water through my veins, I realized whose face it was. It was mine. I thought the worst thing that could happen was getting snowed in. I was wrong. The real horror wasn't the storm. It was the invitation, the rules, the thing behind the glass that wore my face. When we left that cabin, we didn't escape. We just carried something with us. Something cold, something watching. And months later, I got the email. Rate your stay at the Lookout. The listing was gone. The host vanished. But the photo they sent showed the cabin, and in the window, my face. If that made your skin crawl, drop a comment. What would you have done if a child knocked during the storm? And don't forget to like and subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules, where the rules keep you alive, or at least keep you company.